This story took place around the winter of 2014 or 2015, down in Thompson, Connecticut, bordering Webster, Massachusetts. I can't remember which year it was exactly, but this was the day that cemented the idea of ghosts, or things that we believe are ghosts, truly exist. I'd been on many ghost hunts with friends or on my own many times before this. I prefer to go alone because other people never take it as seriously as I do. Often, EVPs will be contaminated with the noises of other ghost hunters, which I believe makes up the majority of EVPs out there. People just mistake the voices or noises heard as ghostly activity. On this occasion, I was on a planned ghost hunt with my then girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend, and a group of 3 or 4 of her friends. We all met up at her friend Mackenzie's house, which was about half a mile from the local legendary Fabian house, located on Fabian Road. The house sits next to a cornfield, surrounded by a thick canopy of trees. From the road, you can't even see a house there during the summer, because the foliage is so thick, and from satellite view, you can barely make out a house there. During the winter, when the leaves fall off, you can see the house perfectly from the street, which sits back probably 70 feet from the road. The house itself looks very strange. I'm not sure what kind of style you'd call it. Gothic, Victorian, or just Victorian. Part of the house has a tower look to it, with that pointy cone-shaped rooftop on it. To be honest, inside and out, the place looks a lot like the house on the 3rd season of Stranger Things. It was about midnight as we walked up the road approaching the house. We were laughing and joking and talking about some of our other personal ghost stories and experiences, as well as some off-topic things. We were all quite excited, because apparently the group had wanted to explore the house, which has been a part of the local folklore their whole lives, but they never had the nerve to explore the place until I came to town, sharing the same obsession with the supernatural as my new girlfriend, Nikki. As we approached the yard, we grew quiet, trying not to raise any suspicion from ongoing cars, which there were very few of, or any nearby neighbors, which there was also very few of. We kept our flashlights off as we circled around the back, looking for the path of least resistance. We tiptoed our way through the bushes and under the canopy, which was not thick this time of year. I believe it was like November. It was pretty cold out. We brought with us a power drill with a Phillips bit on it, just in case it was what we needed to get one of the big plywood boards off the window, which it turned out it was exactly what we needed. Everyone talked as I worked to get the board off the window. In the backyard of tall grass and bushes, there was about 50 old cars. It was very bizarre. They were from many different decades. Finally, I get the thing off, and immediately there was a rush of cold air from behind the board. And I mean, it was absolutely freezing, far colder than the temperature outside the house. We joked and said, the place must be haunted as heck. That cold air just means there's a ghost inside. It was a joke, but it was half serious. Being myself and having the most ghost hunting experience and urban exploration experience, I climbed through first. Then I offered a hand to Nikki, pulling her inside. The rest of the group followed. Ethan, Mackenzie, and I can't remember the other 2 names. We were taken aback by how much stuff was inside. There were boxes of all different sizes, but also possessions of all kinds, stacked up and strewn about everywhere. Clothing, lots of books, art, dishes, electronics. Nothing that appeared older than the 70s. Some of the books looked even older than that. I'm talking 17 to 1800s to very early 1900s. Right away we started taking EVPs and photographs, slowly working our way through the house. I am a bit of a treasure hunter, but also just very curious in general of everything that was inside that house. So I dug in, inspecting as much as I could while we explored. I began to notice something weird about all the belongings and just the general look of the place. It looked as if multiple generations of people had moved in, then abruptly left, leaving all their belongings behind in a hurry. You could tell by the stuff that it was from different decades, like 6 or 7 different decades of people that had come and gone. I could tell that the rest of my party was nervous, but from my previous experience exploring deep underground war bunkers, among other places completely on my own, I wasn't easily deterred. Due to their anxiety, they joked around and talked a lot to make light of the situation, which became annoying, making it harder to do EVPs. Nikki, who was as serious as me, also became annoyed. We then separated ourselves from the rest of the group. We even hid from them in the dark as they came around one corner. We snuck around the next to avoid them. We stood there, just listening, hoping to experience something. We didn't bother taking any EVPs at the moment because there was too much noise going on. The group, without us, made their way upstairs, noisily looking around. When they came back downstairs, Nikki and I snuck up through some kind of secret staircase we'd found, which we thought was super cool. By the time we got upstairs, the group was downstairs. They were calling out our names a few times, but we gave them no response. While we were upstairs, we turned our flashlights on and began exploring. We were near the window when we heard some sort of noise outside. We looked down below. The group walked single file through the cornfield with their flashlights on. Because they had their flashlights on, I was kind of annoyed that they were going to attract unwanted attention. We watched the group leave, and I turned to Nikki, saying, "Hey, just watch. Now that they're gone, things might start happening." Just then, we heard a loud noise at the end of the hallway. We even caught sight of a shadow moving in the room. We rushed out and into the room where we saw the shadow and heard the noise. When we got there, we didn't see anything, except for some really old books from the 17 and 1800s. I started to pick some of them up, fully intending on taking them home as souvenirs. Before we left that room, we took some EVPs and heard some more noise downstairs, so we quietly made our way down there completely unafraid and excited. We were going to be ghost hunters, the kind that took ghosts head on. We didn't run away no matter what. We continued with the EVPs, exploring the old belongings down on the first floor. That's when we found a door in the dilapidated kitchen. We opened it up, discovering it was a doorway to the cellar. I will say now, the thought of going down there made me cringe a bit. It looked so darned creepy. But I didn't let it get to me too much. Neither did brave Nikki. So we made our way down there. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that there was even more belongings and cool old stuff to dig through. Photographs, super old jarred food, all on this metal rack which at first glance we thought was preserved animals or weird things. It turned out it was just jarred and preserved vegetables. I found a couple more pristine old books that I decided to keep, and a couple of really old photographs of what looked to be around 30 to 40 children all lined up in front of the house. They wore white cloaks and white cone hats on top of their heads. It was just so weird. It almost looked like the little kids were all wearing clan uniforms, except for it wasn't a full-on mask but a white cone on their head. I forgot to mention the whole time we had been keeping an eye out for a journal. We'd played with the Ouija board before heading to the Fabian house, and the board had stated to find the journal. Nikki was adamant about searching for it. Personally, I didn't take any stock in what the Ouija board had said, but I did keep an eye out. While we were down in the cellar, I saw the old ash catch for the chimney. I pried it open. It was packed solid with dirt and ash and was partially frozen. It also had some roots I could tell were growing in it. I found an old pry bar and started chipping away at the dirt, hoping to find something cool. While I did this, I suddenly got a horrifying feeling. It felt as if something really wanted us to leave, and to do it quickly. I turned to Nikki. She had a very concerned look on her face. She told me, "I think we need to get out of here." I said to her, "You read my mind." Right when I said that, we started to hear loud footsteps walking through the house. When it sounded like whoever was up there was directly above us, we could see dust and soot falling from the floorboards as each footstep fell on the wooden floor above. Hoping that this was one of our friends that came back to look for us, we slowly crept up the stairs, each of us with a crowbar for defense, because something primal inside of us told us that we should be afraid. And we were. It was weird, considering we had absolutely zero fear up until this point. We made it to the top of the stairs. I peered outside the door back into the kitchen, and I called in a loud voice. "Hello? Anyone there? Ethan, is that you?" but there was no response. I hurried Nikki to come out from behind me into the kitchen. I guided her down the hall back into the dining room from where we first entered the house. As we got next to the window, suddenly, it sounded as if a tornado erupted in the far end of the house, scattering boxes, papers, and belongings everywhere as it moved closer. Nikki and I sat there completely stunned, just staring with our flashlights back down the hallway towards the kitchen, which connected to the rest of the house on the other side of it. We sat and we listened as whatever it was finally entered the kitchen. We could see papers and boxes and things flying past the opening of the kitchen. I knew then whatever this thing was, I didn't want to lay eyes on it. I didn't want to see it. We had to get out of there as fast as possible. I turned to Nikki and said, "Go, out the window." But she just stood there as if in a trance, not moving. I yelled again, "Nikki, get out the window, now." I shoved her a little, which seemed to snap her out of it. She said to me, "Window?" "Yes, Nikki, come on." She turned and swiftly jumped out the window. I threw the books that I'd taken out onto the ground and scrambled out and down as fast as I could. As soon as I hit the ground, I bent over and scooped up the books. As I came up, I knew that thing coming for us was now at the window, but I didn't turn to look at it. I didn't even have to. I could feel it, a vibration, a weight colder than ice, heavier than the world bearing down on me, coming from that window. Nikki and I ran and ran. We ran through the bushes, out from under the canopy, into the cornfield, the same path the rest of the group had taken. Then we were out onto the street. My dumb self ran with an armful of old books, unwilling to give them up. As we ran, we constantly looked behind us, trying to catch a glimpse of our pursuer. It felt as if hell itself was pursuing us, but we couldn't see it. We ran all the way back to Mackenzie's house, a half-mile up the road. We were so happy to be off the street. We climbed the stairs to the second floor of the house. Then we briefly knocked before forcing our way inside. I had been wondering if one or two of our friends had played a prank on us, but as we scrambled inside, we immediately saw that every single one of our friends who had been with us now sat gathered around the dinner table playing with that stupid Ouija board. They were happy to see us. They were especially happy to see Nikki, as none of them really knew me. I was new to their group of friends, so they didn't really trust me with her yet. We told them our story. I think they believed us. I happily displayed the treasure I'd taken with me, the old books, and we sifted through them, trying to look the books up online to see if they were worth anything. We also took the time to upload all our EVPs onto a laptop. We used headphones to slowly go through them all. We got some of the most impressive EVPs I'd ever heard in my life. In one, we heard a female voice say, "Why do you think they're here?" And in response, it sounded like a male voice replied, "Don't know. Don't let them find anything." Now, there is one thing I'd like to say about this experience. I've been to many places in the dead of night alone, and in some instances I've been deep underground in bunkers that are slowly collapsing. I'd been to these locations multiple times, but the Fabian house I never have once returned to, because I know that something dark and terrible is inside. I also believe it has the strength or power, or whatever you want to call it, to hurt people. I have that terrible feeling that if I went in again, I would not be able to come out. I hope you enjoyed this story, and remember that no noise is made for no reason. Me and two of my other friends, Edwin and Conrad, really loved the woods. We'd bike over to the gate that led into the woods. Edwin, Conrad, and I had a certain spot we really liked to go to. We were told that there were coyotes that came out after 5, and we were at the spot that we loved at 5:30. The area we liked to go to was a nice place, with a few shallow pits and several little leaf piles. About 15 yards away from that, there is a clearing. The clearing will be a major part of the story. The icing on the cake there was the 2-floor fort. There were even ladders set up. At around 5:45 that day, Edwin and Conrad started panicking. They began pointing to the clearing, and when I looked, in the middle of it, I saw two large shapes. Both looked kind of like coyotes, but they were much too large. I looked away for a split second, and they'd vanished. Some kind of primal instinct, most likely caused by the horrid dread from seeing the shadow coyote things, welled up in me. Conrad, Edwin, and I scrambled up the ladders of the fort and sat there for a few moments, before Edwin proposed that he and Conrad would fight it off. Being the smallest of the group, I was also the easiest target. So, the two larger guys wanting to help protect me, I felt honored and terrified at the same time. Then that terror turned to cold, primal, inhuman fear. I was horrified. Conrad had heard something towards the other side of the woods. The three of us formed a circle, each of us on a different side. We scanned the woods, and after a few moments of silence, we bolted, jumping the fence into Conrad's yard, which, to much convenience, we were just a bit behind. The two boys bolted, leaving me in the dust. They ran and beckoned me aggressively, telling me to run too. I listened, adrenaline pounding in my ears. We never ever returned to our fort again, in fear of those shadow things. I won't lie to you. This is a strange thing for me to finally talk about after all these years. For the sake of mine and my brother's privacy, names and locations will be changed. You can call me Jake, and my brothers, James, Justin, and Jackson. About 6 years ago, my father passed away in a tragic car accident. Dead on impact, is what they said. Didn't feel a thing. Although I did find some comfort in the fact he didn't suffer, it was still a massive loss for the family. My father was a great man. He was a doting father to his 4 boys and a loving husband to our mother. He had strong arms and a pure heart, going out of his way to improve the lives of everyone around him. He was there to teach and shape us in every step of growing up, and we all carried his best qualities in life. The summer after his passing, my oldest brother, James, suggested that we go camping to honor his memory. The 4 of us agreed, of course. Setting aside our commitments for one measly weekend was a small price to pay. It meant we could go do the thing he loved the most together. Personally, I had no conflicts, being a salaryman that had weekends off anyway. James was between jobs at the moment, and thought that the trip would be a good way to realign his energies. Justin had to simply cancel a few work meetings and explain multiple times to his partner that he wasn't allowed to go. That weekend was just for us. Jackson, however, had just gotten married to his wife about a month prior to our trip, so he had the most difficult time trying to get away. His wife was still very much in the honeymoon phase and could not stand the thought of being apart for more than 24 hours. When the time finally arrived, we had all gathered up our old camping gear, then piled into Jackson's SUV. The trip was going to take about 2 hours, but we didn't mind. We used that time to catch up and laugh. By the time we arrived at Dad's favorite camping site, the sun was already going down. The temperature out there in the mountains drops quickly at night, so we rushed to get our tent set up and our fire going. I, unfortunately, by then was very drunk and ended up snapping one of my tent poles, leaving my shelter in a useless heap on the forest floor. Thankfully, James had my back, and he didn't mind sharing his tent with me. It was the only 2-person tent anyway, but still, it was a kind gesture. Another hour passed, and we were all set up. We sat around the fire telling ghost stories over s'mores. It couldn't have been more perfect. The cool night air was fresh, alive with chirping insects and the hoots of owls. I think it was the buzz I had going, but I thought that the owl sounded sick or something. Its hoots sounded more like a gasp, a death rattle. I shook my head clear of the morbid thoughts and looked up at the sky. The stars shimmered down upon us, bright and beautiful, as we enjoyed our brotherly bonding. Jackson and I both tried and failed miserably to tell a scary story. I couldn't stop laughing long enough to be ominous and spooky, while Jackson just simply sucked at storytelling. We would constantly forget the lines, and we weren't able to make it make sense. We booed him, lovingly, until he stopped and gave up, opting instead to make us more. "Hey," Justin said suddenly, quickly putting on a serious expression. "Did Dad ever tell you guys about the thing that lives out here?" There were some murmurs as we all looked at each other, confused. No, haven't heard that one," Jackson responded, crossing his arms. James and I agreed, pondering why we hadn't heard the story as well. Justin sighed deeply and looked up, meeting each of our eyes before he continued. "It was my 18th birthday. He and I made a deal that to celebrate, we'd go camping, just the two of us." James rolled his eyes and smirked. "Yeah, 'cause you always needed extra help with everything, Cupcake. He had to teach you how to be more manly." Justin narrowed his eyes at our eldest brother and pointed the sharp end of his marshmallow skewer at him. "Hey, I'm not the one that ruined a whole tent because a snake scared the literal pee out of him." We laughed as James put his hands up in defeat. "All right, you got me. Continue with your story." Justin took another few moments to look around at us before he decided we were done interrupting and continued. "We arrived here, of course. It's always been Dad's favorite spot. The second night we were out here, we began to hear these weird hooting noises. I kept trying to explain it away as a sick or injured owl, but it just never sounded right. The third night, Dad came and woke me up. When I looked at him, he was all panicked and sweaty. The look in his eyes as he told me to grab my bag, it was the scariest freaking thing I've ever seen. He never answered my questions, just locked me in the car and grabbed what he could of our stuff as fast as he could. I felt a twinge on the back of my neck as my brother spoke. Did I not hear a sick-sounding owl just earlier? He continued. After we began driving back, Dad started to speed as soon as we hit the main road. The ride back was silent. Eventually, finally, he turned to me and asked if I saw it. I told him no, of course, and he just nodded and looked back at the road. I never knew what it was that he was talking about, what he saw. The silence was deafening as he finished the story. Jackson sat still, not realizing his marshmallow was still in the fire burning. James broke the silence before I could. "No way. Is that why we never came back here? I thought Dad just got too old and tired to keep roughing it like this." I nodded in agreement, just now realizing that he was correct. For the past 4 years, until my father's untimely passing, he had simply refused to go camping here again, no matter how much we begged him. "I'm surprised he never told you all that was the reason," Justin said softly. Then again, I bet he didn't want to sound senile. I'm not sure why, but I lifted my beer up at the moment and smiled, sadly. "Well then," I said, "this one's for you, Dad. We've come to reclaim your beloved camping site. Monster be darned." My brothers all cheered and clinked their bottles and cans to mine, as we all took a deep pull of our beverages. Later that night, Jackson and James put out the fire as Justin and I hid away the food in the bear bag. We all said goodnight then, and drunkenly stumbled our separate ways to our tents. As I unrolled my sleeping bag and got settled in, James entered the tent. His eyes were red and he looked absolutely beat. We gave one last goodnight to each other and let the alcohol rock us to sleep as the wind rustled our tent. Sometime later, I awoke with a headache and a very full bladder. Quietly, I got up, trying my best not to disturb my sleeping brother as I exited the tent, walking a good distance away to try and find a private spot to do my business. Once I had relieved myself, I picked up on a strange sound. No, wait, there was no sound. The woods were dead silent. My heart began to race as my camper's instinct kicked in. A completely silent forest is a deadly forest. I pressed my back up against the tree I just peed on and stayed as still and quiet as possible. Out of the dead silence, there came a slight rustle, then a hoot of what sounded like a sick owl. My blood went cold. I slowly glanced above me, the hair on the back of my neck raising up in a primitive warning. Then our eyes met. That thing in the tree. It was pale, eyes black as the night. It slowly crawled down the trunk of the tree straight towards me, long fingers and arms reaching out, both thin yet lean with muscle. It opened its disgusting mouth, lined with rows of sharp teeth, and let out that horrible noise again, louder this time, almost as if it was taunting me. In that moment, with this horrible creature making its way to me, the flight instinct finally kicked in. I screamed bloody murder and began to hoof it, the thing hooting in excitement as it chased behind me. I felt tears falling down my face as I ran, my legs and lungs burning, my heart pounding. Right as I was almost back to the site, I felt something hit me square in the back. It had caught me. It had pounced and knocked me flat on my face, claws digging into me. I screamed again, in pain this time, feeling teeth sinking into the meat of my calf. I felt flesh and muscle tear as it jerked its head back. I couldn't run anymore. It had crippled me. I gave up. I had no energy to fight, no way to run. All I could do was lie there and wait as this thing began to eat me. In a sudden flash of red, Jackson appeared out of nowhere in his long johns, tackling the creature off of me. "Get him up and run!" he screamed. He then turned and planted the head of our hatchet between the thing's shoulder blades, causing it to shriek and hoot in pain. I felt the arms of James and Justin lifting me up, all but dragging me to the SUV as we clambered away, Jackson right on our heels. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I felt nauseous, coming in and out of consciousness as my brothers tried to keep me awake. Justin tied his shirt around my calf. I'd lost a lot of blood. The area of the bite burned. I awoke in the hospital bed sometime later. James was by my side and quickly called down the hall, bringing in the rest of my brothers and our mom. They all spoke to me softly, gently preparing me for the news that I had lost my leg. Apparently, in the span of 24 hours, and despite the doctor's best efforts, it had become so infected they had to amputate. In an effort to not sound insane, my siblings offered some BS story about how I got my calf caught in an illegal bear trap, and I tried to walk it off for a few days. They left out the monster and made me sound incompetent, but it was better to be dumb than a loon. After all these years, I've finally gotten used to the prosthetic leg. I'm fully mobile and enjoy all the comforts and activities of normal life. I will offer one piece of advice. Please, just please, think twice before you delve into the deep of the dark woods. You can never guarantee that you are truly alone. One year, around mid-September and early October, I went to visit a friend of mine who lived in Oregon, basically up in the middle of nowhere, where it's really all trees, trees, and more trees. For security reasons, I'll call him Tom. Tom lived alone with his dog, a pit bull named Nemesis. Despite his breed, he was a very kind and charming dog. I lived in California, so the drive up to Oregon was a pain, but I've known Tom since kindergarten. I would do anything for him, considering him my best friend, and I knew he would have done anything for me. Anyway, I eventually make it to his little cabin. It's not the best in its class of cabins, Just a small 2-bedroom place with a living room and a small kitchen. When I first stepped out of my car, I noticed a couple of things. First, it was awfully silent, like you could hear a pin drop silent. Second, the moment I entered those woods, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched or even being followed. I greeted him at the cabin door. We talked about how we were and played with Nemesis a bit. We hung out until the early hours of the morning, which was around 3. After that, Tom showed me where I was staying. I unpacked my things and got into my sleep attire and went to bed. Only about an hour later, I began to hear noises outside. I couldn't make out what it was exactly, but as I got up, I heard a faint scream, followed by what sounded like a screech and a woman screaming at the same time. Instantly, I jumped out of bed and opened the window next to my bed a bit. I listened for about 2 minutes straight, but by then, there was nothing but silence. I sat there looking at the window, thinking I was tired or just hearing things. In that moment, as I was reaching for the window to shut it, I heard it, a girl screaming for help, followed by that scream sound coming from the woods outside. Right away, I ran to the door, swinging it open to be greeted by my friend and Nemesis. "Did you hear that, Tom?" I asked. Yeah, I did. Let's go check it out, see what the heck is going on." I was about to take off when Tom said, "Wait, we shouldn't go out there unarmed. You can never be too sure." He then ran over to his chest, opening it to pull out a small pistol. He handed it to me, and he took his .22 LR. The screaming and screeching was getting louder and louder. Together, we bolted toward the origin of the noises. When we came within about 50 feet of the woods, I shouted, "Hello? Anyone out there?" And as if to answer me, the cry for help came again. "Follow our voices," Tom shouted. Several seconds more of us shouting back. We made out a figure of a girl running through the brush and trees. As she got closer, we could tell that her clothes were all torn up. She had blood on her arm, back, legs, and her abdomen. When she saw us, she had a startled look on her face, but she ran even faster towards us. When she got to us, she didn't slow down and practically crashed into me, knocking us into the ground. Tom then shouted, "What the heck is that?" As I lifted my head above the girl's shoulder, I saw this thing. It was charging at us on all fours. As it moved, it gave off this squishy sound, like when you get your shoes wet and step in them. The creature itself was very skinny, but what really stood out to me were its eyes. They were a bright, fiery red. "Tom, run!" I shouted at Tom as I picked up the now weakened girl. We made a mad dash back to the cabin. Tom ran in front of us, the girl constantly shouting to hurry. Here and there, Tom shot at the thing. I think some of the shots connected, because a couple of times when he fired, it responded with a screech, something that sounded pained. Even so, it was getting closer and closer to us. We were nearly to the front door. In that instant, I turned around to see if it was following us, and I saw that creature in more detail. Though it was skinny, it was still huge, not like bulky, but long. Its skin was all fleshy with patches of hair. Its hands were too long, ending in sharp points. I wasn't watching my footing, and I was a bit startled by that thing's appearance. My foot ended up getting caught on something. I fell with the girl to the ground. I pulled the pistol from my pants and readied myself, but no matter what we did, it was like there was no stopping this thing. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Nemesis come out of the door and charge at the creature. Nemesis jumped, biting the thing on its forearm. The creature cried out in pain, and it turned its attention to Nemesis. Then the dog ran into the woods, the creature on its tail. Soon after, there was nothing but silence again. We got inside the cabin, locking everything up. Then we tended to the girl's injuries. By then, she was unconscious. We put the girl in my room. Tom and I stayed in the living room waiting for Nemesis to come back. Or, in the worst case scenario, that creature. By 10 a.m., there was no sign of Nemesis. Tom went out with his gun in the direction Nemesis had run off to, and I stayed at the cabin with that girl. About 2 hours after Tom left, the girl came to. She told me that she had gone outside to see why her dogs were whining. When she stepped outside, that creature began chasing her. She ran through the woods, trying to lose it, and that's when she found us. Branches and brush from the forest apparently cut her up real bad. Not long after the girl told me her story, Tom came back. Nemesis, our hero, didn't make it through the night. He lay lifeless in Tom's arms. We buried him that day. I know if it wasn't for Nemesis, I wouldn't be here to tell this story, nor would that girl. But one thing is on my mind to this day. What even was that thing?